I am a gay pro-choice Republican. 3 students per day, so an entire classroom every week. 21 students every week were dying because they were taking pills, they were doing, drugs like with their friends that were laced with fentanyl. When you say Lake and Riley, somebody who shouldn't have been in there, if they stop him because he's speeding and he doesn't have a driver's license, they can't ask him, for example, are you an illegal immigrant? Are you in this country legally? They can't do that here in California because they are prevented by state law. Calls me an anti-LGBT extremist. I say, I'm not a homophobe and neither is my husband. Apparently I'm not the right type of gay. Somebody
not gay enough.
So it's those people, the party of acceptance, that hate me the most. My mother didn't speak to me for 4 years when I came out to her, and that was when I was 38. That was 7 years ago. She didn't speak to me. LGB should be separated from the T and the Q.
That was the next question.
Yes. So LGB, lesbian, gay, bisexual. You could eliminate everybody else in the world, and the T and the Q people would still be unhappy. Why? Because they're unhappy with themselves. I'm not anti-trans, I am anti-misdiagnosis. I would declare a national epidemic of mental health. Our silence is what allowed this to develop and multiply. And I say no more. No more.
Dr. Alex Balekian is a board-certified intensivist with work experience in medical, surgical trauma, and stroke neurosurgical ICU, as well as a board-certified pulmonologist specializing in lung cancer and interstitial lung disease. Wow, it's hard to read. Born and raised in Glendale, California, he is now running for Congress in District 30, which includes Glendale, Burbank, Sunland, Tehunga, and parts of Pasadena, as well as urban areas like Hollywood, West Hollywood, and Silver Lake. He embodies characteristics not typically associated with contemporary Republican candidates. Middle Eastern, the son of immigrants, pro-choice, and never having run for public office before. He is also married to a man. This unique profile likely contributed to his success in a district where a dem-on-dem general election seemed inevitable. Balekian identifies as a proud Deukmejian, right? Republican, we'll talk about that, has felt disenfranchised within the party for the last 20 years. He began the race as a no-party preference candidate before redesignating his campaign as Republican 2 months later. His campaign platform focuses on keeping the streets clean and safe, reducing taxes, and limiting government intrusion into personal lives. These priorities resonate with voters seeking law and order, fiscal responsibility, and personal freedom. Alex states, progressive policies aren't working. My fiscally responsible, socially sane platform prioritizing ideas over identity politics will attract disenfranchised voters, moderate Democrats, independents, and moderate Republicans, tired of extreme polarization in the two-party system. Balekian frames his campaign as a contest between progressives and non-progressives, rather than Democrats versus Republicans. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Don't you think that it's not the Democrats versus Republicans or progressives versus non-progressives? It's basically freedom versus communism now.
It is. I think that we have lost focus of what makes us uniquely American. And I try to remind people what makes us different from the rest of the world is our Constitution. We have our Constitution and we have rights that were granted to us by the Founding Fathers. What I tell people is even in the United Kingdom, there was no guarantee of free speech until the late 90s. So we should...
90s.
Late 90s, yes.
Not 19th century, but
no,
90s.
No. I think it was 1998 when they finally passed a law to guarantee free speech. And that is now being eroded.
Yes.
Because you cannot say things online. I think it was a law and not necessarily an amendment to their constitution. But with ours, it's a constitution. So that's what I want to remind people is we need to remind ourselves what makes us uniquely American and free speech, first and foremost. And you should, even if you don't agree with what the other person says, they deserve the respect of being able to say it. You shouldn't give them praise if you disagree. You shouldn't give them your business if you disagree. But you have the right to cover your ears and walk away. You don't have the right to cover their mouth.
Yeah, the UK goes full-blown communism right now. They get people to jail, like dozens, almost every week, by dozens. You identify yourself as a Deukmejian Republican. What does this mean? So there is a person.
Yes. George Deukmejian was governor of California from 1982 to 1990. And I was born and raised in California. And I tell people, you couldn't be Armenian in California in the 80s and not be a Deukmejian Republican, because that was like your Uncle George running the state. And back then, and so I grew up in a Republican household, because back then being a Deukmejian Republican meant public safety, stay out of my bank account, stay out of my family life. And so that is where my saying of fiscally responsible, socially sane comes in. I want balanced budgets. I want as low taxes as possible in order to keep our streets clean and safe, in order to keep the streets paved and have everybody get to work efficiently. But I don't want to run people's lives like we're at a Sunday school. You do you within your home, and outside your home, be a respectful citizen, be a law-abiding citizen, and everybody gets along okay.
So the first time I visited the US was 2018. I'm 36 years old. I was born and raised in Lithuania, former USSR. I was always watching Hollywood movies. I was listening to the US music. So the influence of the United States of America to the whole entire world is huge, immense, right? And I was always dreaming of living here, especially in California, because of the movies. I watched the sunsets, the ocean, the Stallone, the Schwarzenegger with the big muscles, with the guns, all that action movies, and those palm trees, the great weather. And I was like, California is my dream state, my dream country, my dream place. So the first time I visited US was 2018. I was like, okay, so we stayed at Venice Beach. Venice Beach had homeless back then, but it wasn't that bad.
Yep.
After 4 years in 2022, I came to the US for the second time, and I was like, wait a minute, something has changed. At that time, I was already married, and I got to the Venice Beach to Santa Monica with my wife. And it's like, before that, I was telling her those incredible stories. So Santa Monica is so amazing. The third promenade, right? The beach, amazing, right? Santa Monica Pier. Once we got there, we're like, feces, homeless, a junkie, and lots of them. She's like, this is the dream place. I was like, no. Something has changed in 4 years.
Yeah.
Then we got to the US last year to live here. And even for living here for almost 18 months, I see the difference, the decline I can see even in 1.5 years. So this area, even last spring, was not that criminal as it is right now.
Right.
We got the helicopters every day, multiple times a day. We hear the police sirens every day. And this is Woodland Hills.
Yep.
That's not a bad area, right? There's LA ends with Woodland Hills.
Yep.
Further is Calabasas, Thousand Oaks, and etc. So this is definitely not the downtown or Hollywood. Everything goes just straight to the hell. Why so? Do you have any reason why is it so bad?
There are multiple reasons. So let's first start with the pandemic, the shutdown. Yes. In 2020, a lot of things changed socially. And when I say socially, being quarantined inside your house really messed with a lot of people's heads. We are human beings. We're very social creatures. And that ability to socialize freely suddenly went away. And we were lacking in things. And that's why a lot of people started drinking more during the pandemic. A lot of people started doing drugs more. Unintentional overdoses from pills, fentanyl, oxycodone, etc. They started skyrocketing. So that was number one, that the shutdown, this prolonged shutdown, definitely played with a lot of people's minds because we're social creatures. Another thing that happened is once we and so another big thing in 2020 after the shutdowns, right, was George Floyd. So George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, that entire movement came up. So not only did you start having people kind of socially, things were starting to get different as far as them yearning and their social networks being interrupted, but police started being the bad guys, and it was fashionable to say defund the police. It was fashionable to blame everything and call them fascists. And the police are there to maintain public safety, basic public safety. And them doing their daily jobs was starting to be against the law, a liability. Why were you using this much force? It's your fault that this person died. And cops were being penalized simply for doing their job. And a lot of them, from the stress of it, left. They said, this is not worth it. It's not worth me getting stripped, losing my pension, etc. I'm just going to quit while I'm ahead. Then because the politicians who were in power said defund the police, nobody wanted to become a policeman. So your recruitment was bad. I mean, look at LAPD. For a while, they were short 20%. I think they still are. So not only did you have this social fabric that was interrupted and people behaving differently, like I said, more alcohol, more drugs, but then the basic public safety, that safety net, was also interrupted because the people who were tasked with providing us that safety were demonized.
And demonized by who? By the House?
Demonized.
Democrats ruled the House back then?
So it's not the House, it's locally, right? So police are under local control. Mm-hmm. So you had people like George Gascon, who, as district attorney, would prioritize criminals over police and victims. George Gascon was elected in 2020 because his predecessor, Jackie Lacey, District Attorney Jackie Lacey, was viewed as too friendly to the cops.
Is it possible?
She was viewed as too friendly of the cops, and my opponent in this congressional race, Laura Friedman, retracted her endorsement of Jackie Lacey. Adam Schiff, who is currently in the seat, retracted his endorsement of Jackie Lacey. So they look like they were supporting him. And my opponent, Laura Friedman, still does. And we have her on camera saying, I support the re-election of George Gascon. So in multiple instances, you had people who were soft on crime. You had the cops who were being blamed that they're doing something wrong when they're just doing their job. So between that interruption of the social fabric, coupled with the erosion of maintaining basic public safety, that is where you had this empty real estate of lawlessness that suddenly people multiplied to fill. And that is exactly how we got in this position.
So in Europe, we do have homeless. For instance, in Lithuania, you have to search for a homeless, but that's a very small country, right?
Yeah.
Former USSR, 2.5 million population only. That's a very small country.
Yep.
When you go to Poland, you have to search for homeless. Once you go to Germany, France, Spain, there are homelessness, right? There is homelessness. For instance, in Barcelona, lots of homeless.
Yeah.
But these people are not like the homeless that are here. They don't talk to each other. They don't scream at the sky. So I did more research and I found out that mental institutions were closed in 1975, right? So there is a thing, deinstitutionalization. In the 1975 ruling O'Connor versus Donaldson, the U.S. Supreme Court restricted the rights of states to incarcerate someone who was not violent. This was followed up with the 1978 ruling Addington versus Texas, further restricting states from confining anyone involuntarily for mental illness. And then in the 1980s was the Mental Health System Act. They tried to protect it, but it didn't succeed. So basically you have no mental institutions at all?
Correct.
Like at all?
So this is what happened. So a lot of people blame Ronald Reagan for closing all the federal mental institutions.
Yes.
So what happened in those Supreme Court cases that you're discussing, and I'm glad that we're discussing this because my signature piece of legislation as the public safety candidate and also as a physician is my solution to fix the homelessness problem, which I can definitely do from Congress, and I'll explain based on some of these things that you talked about. So the Supreme Court cases, they ruled that people essentially couldn't be placed in prison against their will, yes, especially if they weren't violent. But at the time, they didn't take into account medical capacity. So there are people who lack medical capacity. In medicine, we call that a 5150, okay, where they are a danger to others or to themselves because either they're going to hurt others because they are having these hallucinations where they think somebody's chasing them and they say, I need to kill Vlad because he's chasing me, or somebody cannot take care of themselves. They cannot just do basic self-care, basic hygiene, and they lack that medical capacity. So a 5150 is something that we can use in a hospital to keep somebody within the hospital, to diagnose them, say, okay, you have schizophrenia. You don't see things the way that we do. Let's start medications. Let's get you treated. Let's get you better. When you're better, that 5150, you no longer renew it. You say, okay, you're better. We can discharge you from the hospital to follow up at a local clinic by your house, by your support network so that you can continue your care. That was the intention in 1980 when Jimmy Carter passed his Mental Services Act. But at that time, the country was in a terrible recession. There was high inflation, spend. And here you have Ronald Reagan coming in, says, we need to stop spending. And he immediately repealed the Mental Services Act. Closed the federal institutions. State institutions were supposed to open up in their place to take the slack. That never happened. And then that is where you had this lack of support for the mentally ill. So what I would advocate is let's reopen those federal institutions. We know that there were abuses in the past. We can learn from them so that we don't repeat them. I, as a physician, know, because I run my private practice, I know how to run things efficiently. We can open up these mental institutions. We can run them ethically. We can also run them efficiently so that they are not a drain on the system. And these people in Venice who are yelling at the sky, who see things, they can be hospitalized, they can be put on treatment, they can get better. We find where their family is. We reunite them with their family, even if it's in a different state. We send federal dollars to that state to help give them that support, okay? And that's how you fix it from Congress. These tent cities, they are not their family support systems. Number two, much bigger problem, the drugs. Now, the synthetic drugs that are coming in, the synthetic fentanyl, we know that China is making the precursor ingredients, sending them to Mexico, where they are mixed into the drug and then smuggled across our southern border, which is not being protected. People say defund the police. No, I say fund Customs and Border Patrol so that they intercept the drugs. We just had maybe a week or two ago 5,000 pounds of crystal meth disguised as watermelons intercepted at the southern border. 5,000 pounds of meth. So if you're going to solve homelessness, you need to seal the border, because these homeless people who are doing drugs cannot be expected to remain sober if drugs are just coming in. And even somebody who doesn't have mental illness, the synthetic drugs nowadays are damaging their brain with every use. So if they didn't start out schizophrenic, with repeated drug use, that could trigger schizophrenia because of the brain damage, because these chemicals now, the synthetics, are so powerful and so toxic to the brain.
So the whole purpose of a drug dealer is to sell as much drugs as possible, right?
Correct.
But why do they then switch to fentanyl, which is very lethal?
It's in medicine, there's something called a therapeutic window. So the therapeutic window is the dose is high enough to cause the effect, but not so high that it's toxic. And so what you want your users to do is be in that therapeutic window. So fentanyl, synthetic fentanyl, gives them this feeling. It's an amazing feeling that you wouldn't get with, let's say, cocaine or marijuana. So it's like
heroin.
Yeah. So heroin's there, but fentanyl is just more potent. So fentanyl, it's synthetic and it's more potent. It just hits. It's researched. It's pharmaceutically researched. It's not a normally.
It's approved by FDA.
Correct. So we use it in the hospital. I use it when there is somebody on life support in the hospital and they have a tube in their throat and we want them out until they get better. We put them on a fentanyl drip. So
why fentanyl but not morphine?
Because fentanyl is shorter acting. And especially in somebody with kidney failure, it sticks around in the system very, very long time. But even somebody with kidney failure, for example, fentanyl, you turn off the fentanyl drip, within a few hours they're awake.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So morphine, though, it sticks around. All of the M drugs, morphine, meperidine, midazolam. So midazolam is Versed. So people with kidney failure, the M drugs stick around. So morphine, we found that when you shut off the morphine, especially the older patients with the weaker kidneys, it takes them sometimes days to wake up. So that's why from Congress, I can solve it, because number one, we reopen the federal institutions so that these very severely mentally ill people can be hospitalized, can get better. And then when they're better, then they are discharged to a local clinic. The people who have drug use, 170,000 homeless people in California, 40% of them are from out of state. Their families are from out of state. The number one predictor for sobriety in rehab is family support. So if we want these homeless people to kick their habit and to stay sober, These tent cities are not their support. We need to find where their family is. We need to reunite them with their family. Again, moving them across state lines, you can only do that from Congress. You pair it with federal dollars so that their home state can open up a rehab bed. Something as simple as hiring addiction counselors, right? We talk about, oh, let's cancel student debt, let's cancel student debt. I say, let us cancel student debt for people who are going to go into addiction rehab, because that's what we need right now. So if you have a certain specific skill sets that we say, okay, we're going to pay for your education because we need more addiction counselors, that is how you solve this homelessness crisis. So those are some of the unique ways that I, in office as a physician, would guarantee public safety.
So the deinstitutionalization. So at first they came for the mental health facilities, right?
Yes.
Then they scream, defund the police.
Yes.
So at the same time, when they say defund the police, they want some kind of an anarchy. But at the same time, they want more police and more surveillance on us.
Yeah.
But it doesn't go hand to hand. So what do they really want? Less or more police, less or more surveillance. If not the police, who's gonna protect us and provide law and order?
So this is where you separate it into the people and the politicians. Okay, so there are people on the ground who are virtue signaling. I'm a good person. I believe that people are great. I believe that cops are bad. I believe that all lives matter. Black lives matter. Love is love. You know, they're the people who espouse those. We call them the vocal fringe minority. It's not a lot of people. It's a handful of people who are just very loud. Again, it's not a choir. It's not a chorus. It's 2 or 3 soprano divas that are just very loud and have a lot of demands. And so those are the people who want to defund the police. And then you have the politicians. The politicians don't care about defunding the police. The politicians care about themselves and maintaining their power. And how they're going to do that is by recruiting, keeping, brainwashing, whatever you want to call it, a segment of the people who are going to be their boots on the ground, who are going to vouch for them. And so they give the people on the ground what they want. And so they, in their ivory towers, maintain their power. So they care about their safety, but if the people on the ground want, defund the police, they'll give that to them. If they're happy burning buildings and being in that chaos, and the wife of the governor wants to open up her windows in her protected house and say that she's breathing in the smell of burning tires, that is the agreement that they get in with themselves.
But do they think that they can control the chaos? Do you think that they kind of can build the wall because they live in that areas that are very highly protected?
Did you see the Democratic National Convention? Did you see the United Center in Chicago where they built a wall? And unless you had credentials, unless you were part of that inner sanctum, they didn't let you in. So they show that they are capable of it. I don't know how long that they're capable of it. Okay, because you're going to have people like, every dictator eventually has to reckon with the people. You had people like Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, right? You had people like Hosni Mubarak in Egypt. Finally, when enough people on the ground don't like you, they'll take you out. They'll take you out of power, which they did with those two. So it's this devil's bargain, I'm going to say, where they have this uneasy alliance with people on the ground and then themselves up there.
Yeah, but once they let in, how many? 15 million people were let in illegally in the past 2 years, right?
I don't know, but I don't know exactly the count. I've lost count, but I some places said 7 million. I don't know exactly the number, but it's a lot of people.
But it's millions and millions upon millions.
Yes, and they are not evenly distributed. You have states like California, for example, which are giving free health care to illegal immigrants, and now they're about to pass a law, if the governor doesn't veto it, to allow illegal immigrants to apply for state-sponsored down payments on homes so they can buy homes. So we, the people, we, the citizens who are here legally, are going to have to compete against somebody who just crossed the border 2 weeks ago and is coming in and saying, okay, I qualify because I don't have a job and I have no money, and I'm going to apply for this state-sponsored down payment to buy a home, where there's this native California-born person who's 35 years old who is employed but makes some money, doesn't qualify for the state program and cannot get a house? And is paying taxes to fund that down payment that the state is going to give. How is that fair?
But if they say that those illegals are just refugees, it means they run from a country that is tyrannical and etc. So they don't have any money. So it doesn't matter whether they have a down payment or not. They're not gonna pay for their mortgage.
And again, this whole notion of refugee status, I think a lot of people exploited that loophole. They just came and said, "I'm a refugee," and so they came through. And I think, again, we should vet those people because we don't know who's coming in. They say refugee, and we bring them in, and we say, okay, you're going to get here's a phone. We're going to call you for your appointment, your immigration appointment, which may or may not be within 2 years.
Yes.
I think there's something like 70,000 or maybe over 100,000 children that have crossed over that are unaccounted for. They don't know where they ended up. And so
they cross the border and they have no idea where are the children.
Correct, because allegedly they said, okay, this person's uncle lives here. Is it really the uncle? Is it somebody who's trafficking them? I don't know, because the country, the feds, aren't keeping good track. So they don't know where these children have ultimately ended up. They don't know with whom. They were told it was a family member. Unclear if that's true or not. They definitely didn't try to corroborate that statement.
Yeah, but do the kids cross the border themselves, or with the parent, or with the uncle, with somebody?
So from what I've read, there are not a lot. There are individual, like solitary children crossing over. That is not the majority. The majority is they're crossing with an adult. Is that adult truly their blood relative?
Yes.
Nobody's corroborating that.
They don't do DNA tests.
No.
It's too expensive.
Yeah. So there's just, and then of course, like, oh, I'm a refugee. I didn't come with my paperwork. We're just taking these people on their word.
So you propose sober living campuses.
So yeah, that's, you definitely need sober living. You mean for drug users and alcohol users? Yeah. So what do we in medicine call substance abuse or substance addiction? It is something that gets in the way of your normal maintenance. So there are people who drink. There are people who drink recreationally. If they don't allow that drinking to get in the way of their job, if they don't allow that drinking to get in the way of harming people. So that's why somebody who is caught for drunk driving, you could have hurt somebody. You could have hurt yourself. So that drinking is a problem there. If you get so drunk that you're hungover and you miss work, or you're drunk at work and you cannot hold down your job, that is alcohol addiction. So it has to get in the way of your functioning to maintain yourself, or how you interact with other people. Let's say you get drunk and you get belligerent and you start hitting people. So that is problematic drinking or problematic drug use. So when it is diagnosed as a problem, then you say, okay, you need to get sober, and you should not. I mean, we dissuade people from even trying it recreationally. So you need to get off it. So people like Robert Downey Jr., for example, very bad drug addiction previously. Now he's completely clean and sober, doesn't do drugs. What he does is he just does a lot of like Tai Chi, yoga, things of that sort. He reinvests his energy elsewhere. So whatever way we can get these people sober, we should do. And in the medical literature, the most successful way, again, it's not a slam dunk, but the most successful rehab programs have family involved. So when you have family involved in your addiction counseling, you are sober more often. If you have schizophrenia and you have family involved in your treatment, you stay on your medicines more often. You have fewer psychotic breaks. So family support, that network, is huge. And yes, you can have friends, but like I said, in 2020, after the shutdown of those interruptions where we had to shelter in place, those relationships suffered. That normal support network that we have, that we take for granted, suffered. And that is why I say, these homeless people that are here in those tent cities are, number one, drug dens. Either they manufacture drugs there, or that's where the drug dealers come. And those people live there because what's the one thing that they have in common? They all have mental illness. They all have drug addiction that has gotten in the way of their normal social functioning. They're not a family. They're just people who have the same medical diagnoses. And what we need to do is we need to disband those tent cities. We need to ask those people, where is your family? We need to get them sober. We need to have that support network for them any which way we can get it.
But that's billions upon billions.
We have the money. We have the money. So I'll go, for example, our defense budget. Okay. 40% of our defense budget, about $300 billion a year, is spent on weapons for other countries. I say a government should be there to focus on the health, wealth, and security of its own citizens. That is what we should prioritize. Our health, our wealth, our security. So when I say our health, Medicare, Medicaid, the insurance programs, they benefit our own people. Don't cut them, bolster them, secure them. Wealth, Social Security, right? Older people who are on fixed incomes. Don't cut Social Security, stabilize it, bolster it, because it helps our citizens, our people. Health, wealth, and security. Secure our southern border. Make sure we have public safety. House our homeless, our veterans who fought in foreign wars and now come here and have no supports. If we have plenty of money for other things after we have paid for our own health, wealth, and security, that's fine. Let's go ahead and defend other countries. Let's go ahead and send weapons elsewhere. But if we are not doing basic maintenance on our own people, but we're sending $300 billion to buy weapons for other countries in their wars, I say we have a problem. The money's all there. Our politicians are just using it inefficiently. They are directing it towards special interests, weapons makers. You have weapons makers like Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. I think Lockheed Martin makes 92% of its income from federal military contracts. Right? That is their gravy train. Of course they're going to go to all the congressional representatives and all the senators and give them lobbying money and say, please vote yes on this.
Search for a fight.
Say again?
Searching for a fight.
Yes,
basically.
Searching
Across
for a
the
fight.
globe.
Correct. So they love it when Israel keeps bombing Gaza. They love it when Hezbollah bombs Israel. They love it when Hamas bombs Israel because they don't care who's wrong or who's right. They just want people to use their rockets.
Yeah.
And they're happy sending it over to anybody. That's what they want. And I think that's what we need to stop.
And you can use this rocket only once. So
Correct.
You have to buy again and again and again.
Right.
But California is the #1 economy in the world. That's crazy. And just last year, Newsom lost track of $20 billion.
26 billion, I think it was.
26 billion, not million, billion dollars.
Billion, yes. On homelessness.
On homelessness only.
Only on homelessness, yes. So yeah, California, I think it's if I remember correctly, the 6th or 7th, by itself is the 6th or 7th largest economy in the world. So yeah, United States #1, China's a close #2.
Japan, Germany, UK, and then
I don't know, but I think California's right around 6.
Yes.
So it by itself. So if we wanted to secede, then Gavin Newsom would be the president of the 6th or 7th largest economy in the world. But that is dropping. That is dropping. Why? Because businesses are leaving.
I wonder why.
Right, businesses are leaving. So in my hometown of Glendale, we had Nestle have its American headquarters. That was huge that we had Nestle in Glendale. Nestle left and went to Virginia. Then you had Toyota, which was in the South Bay in Torrance. They left and they went to Texas. You have, Elon Musk, right? So he's going to move X and Twitter over to join Tesla in Texas. So you have a lot of companies moving over because it's difficult to do business.
State Farm.
Yes. Yeah, actually, that's right. Chevron is moving, I think, after 100 and some odd years, right?
Yes.
They've been a century in California, and they're moving. And I, as a small business owner, I run my medical practice. There are more and more regulations that the state is mandating on employers, and it's harder and harder to maintain a business. It's harder and harder to recruit and retain workers, and that's why people are leaving.
But I don't have a problem with Newsom, right? He does what he does. I have a problem with the voters. They got this guy for 4 years, and they said, "Yeah, I want to have him for 4 more years."
Yeah,
and they voted him in 2022.
So, well, here's the problem. What is the alternative?
Exactly.
Right. So the blame lies squarely on the Republican Party for not providing an alternative
at all in California at all
that is likable and relatable.
Yes.
And that is why I am trying to be the non-traditional candidate. I am trying to be likable and relatable. Okay. People want balanced budgets. They want lower taxes. They want things to run efficiently. They don't want the government to run their lives socially. And that is where the Republican Party has suffered. I'm going to say it out loud. That is where the Republican Party has suffered. And so that is why I call myself fiscally responsible and socially sane. Because I believe, again, the government's job, health, wealth, and security, and it should do so as efficiently as possible. And everything else, abortion, gay marriage, stay out of it. Stay out of people's homes, right? Let them keep their money, let them work hard, open their businesses, be productive citizens. So long as they are abiding by the law and they are respectful to their friends and neighbors, leave them alone. And that is this refreshing message that people, moderate Democrats, are saying, oh my God, now I want to vote for you. And they say, oh, but you're Republican. I said, I am a lifelong Deukmejian Republican. This is what I stand for. And then when I say it, they say, okay, I'm going to vote for you.
So you were born and raised in Glendale?
Yes.
Glendale is a separate city. It's not the part of the LA. It's LA County.
Correct. Yeah. So Glendale is the third largest city in LA County. So in LA County, number one city is Los Angeles. Number two biggest city is Long Beach. Number three biggest city is Glendale. So we have about 220,000 people now.
Why it's so safe and almost no homeless? Like, why?
I was born in Glendale in 1979 during the wave of Armenian immigrants that was coming from the Middle East.
Yes.
So because of the Iranian Islamic Revolution, my parents lived in, my father was born and raised in Baghdad. So in Iraq, Saddam and the Baathists were taking over. And then in Lebanon, you had the civil war that started in 1975. So there were a lot of Armenians who were displaced and they came over. So there was a large Armenian migration to Hollywood and Glendale.
And Armenia was part of the USSR, the communist.
Correct. Yeah.
To live
so
there.
these were Armenians. So those are the Armenians behind the Iron Curtain. They could not leave.
Some of them left somehow.
Some of them did leave somehow, but these are the ones who were outside of the Iron Curtain, the Western Armenians. And so from then onward, it was all about open up your small business, be successful, traditional immigrant values. Number one, home and family above everything.
Yes.
Number two, the kids need to study hard and get a good education. And number three, work hard, build your American dream, leave something for the community and for your family. And that is why for the last 40 years, it has been as safe as it has been. Prior to that, Glendale was actually a very large Cuban community. And then they started leaving, I guess, after the Armenians came. But again, similar
values.
Similar immigrant community, right? And of course, you had white people that were also living there. Very large German community, actually. So Montrose, which is just north of Glendale, has its yearly Oktoberfest. So just, again, very large traditional German community. So these are hardworking immigrants who have different cultures, but a similar set of values. And, what you were saying also, I, from Lithuania, we looked at America and we said, oh, we love America. We want to come to America. Because this country still can be, but was the land of opportunity. Mm-hmm. And what I tell people is the reason that America, the American dream, what is the American dream? You could be somebody even if you were a nobody. Because in Europe, if you didn't have land or a title, you were nobody. Either you were nobility, and that was handed down because of your birthright, or you were the working class, and you worked for them. But there was not that social mobility. But in America, a nobody could become somebody. And I think because Glendale was so immigrant heavy, that is why we said, no, we don't want these homeless people. We want clean streets. We want order. We want public safety. And that was guaranteed to us. And then recently now, you've had more liberally minded people. I'm not even going to say liberal. I'm going to say far left progressives who say defund the police.
In Glendale.
Yeah, they say, these criminals, it's not their fault. Poor guys, they're stealing because they're poor. These homeless people, it's not their fault. Don't force them to live inside housing. This is what they want to do. Let them do what they're going to do. No. And so enough. And most immigrants just want to lie low, right? They don't want to stick their neck out. Mm-hmm. And so there was no pushback. until now you can no longer ignore it. And there is more and more pushback. Why are these homeless people numerous? Why are we not, being more stringent against criminals? Why am I not able to, why am I not able to survey what my child is learning in school? Why can I not meet with their teachers and say, I'm not in agreement with what you're teaching. I want to pull my child from these specific schools because I don't agree with the curriculum. So those kinds of things now people are pushing back. And I am trying to focus their energy into productive ways and saying, because a lot of Armenians unfortunately don't vote. They get very angry, they protest, but then that final way that you're supposed to make it happen, pulling that trigger to make that change, they don't follow through.
They're just lazy.
I don't know if they're lazy. There's a bunch of different reasons. The Soviet Armenians who came over in the 90s after the Iron Curtain fell, they have a mistrust of the system. Mm-hmm. Somebody just brought it up to me and I was shocked because I never thought about it this way. They said, oh, the government knows who I voted for and they'll come after me if the correct party doesn't get elected. And I said, what are you talking about? This is all anonymous. Nobody knows how you vote. We know whether you voted yes or no, but we don't know, who you voted for. That apparently is a concern for people that I didn't even know about. So now we're doing messaging in Armenian saying it is completely anonymous. Nobody's going to know how you voted. Don't be afraid. There will be no consequences. The only consequence is that somebody that you don't like gets elected because you didn't participate.
But that's the exact leftover of communism. So communism left Lithuania in 1991. Uh-huh. My dad is 59. Communism is still instilled in his mind. Mm-hmm. He's kind of afraid. Yeah, don't stick your neck out. Just be quiet, be silent. Don't speak up. That's what it is, communism.
They say it takes about 3 generations for that to kind of leach out. So that's going to be 60 to 80 years before that comes out.
But it's going to go full circle because the game that you play right now in the US with the other candidate, she's a full-blown Marxist. She's a communist.
She is. Yeah. I mean, she says she's very big on environment, very big. She's like, we need to get people out of their cars. And it's not simple just to get rid of cars. We need to get rid of the parking spaces. So she is advocating higher gas taxes. She is advocating taking out parking spaces and putting bike lanes because she says we need to get people out of their cars.
That's Europe. I hate Europe for that. Whether you go to the Netherlands, Germany, France, everybody, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, the cars are very small, the streets are very narrow, no parking lots, no parking spaces. If you want to go, just go to Starbucks and grab a coffee and leave, no way. You're going to park underground, you're going to pay for the parking, walk 5 minutes, stay in the lane, take your coffee, back to the car. It takes a while. Yep. I hate Europe for that. Bikes and bikes and bikes and bikes and bikes. And it's raining in the Netherlands, in Germany.
So, but what I tell people is, that is the romanticization of Europe for us. So
stay out of it. That's nightmare.
But Europe, all those cities, they are centuries old.
Yes.
They were built before cars were a thing.
Yes.
So cars and parking had to adapt. I mean, go to Paris, right? There are those narrow streets with the buildings that are centuries old, built during Napoleonic times, 1800. So the cars had to adapt for that, not the other way around. Here, modern cities built with very large boulevards to accommodate that. And so it's
music to my ears.
And also what I tell people is only the big cities in Europe are like that. So you go like Paris, yes, everybody walks around and they go to their Starbucks and they go to their metro and they go. But go to smaller cities in Provence, for example, everybody drives a car because you have large vineyards. One house is very far from the other. And everybody drives cars. They don't bicycle there.
No.
Nobody bicycles there. It's foolish to believe that. And so everybody like Laura Friedman, who wants to institute this European romantic ideal is not rooted in reality. I tell people the R next to my name on the ballot, that stands for reality. And these people have this pipe dream that they're trying to shove down our throats assuring us that we're going to like the taste if we simply just opened our mouths.
They want to change your lifestyle.
Right. And that is what I'm going against, because even something as simple as a bicycle lane can be a threat to public safety. How? I'm a physician. I'm an intensive care physician. I take care of stroke patients all the time. With strokes, minutes matter. And if you have a road diet where one lane on each side is taken out to do a bicycle lane, and there's more congestion, and your mother is having a stroke, and the ambulance or the fire department cannot get their big trucks through in time. With a stroke, minutes matter, and something as simple as a bicycle lane can be a threat to public safety.
They will never get Americans to ride a bike. They will never do that. It's impossible.
They're trying. They are definitely trying their best, right? So our California gas tax started rising. It's going to rise by 50 cents in a single year, and it started rising July 1st. They're doing it 2 cents every other week so that we don't notice. But that gas tax is going up. And then next July, it'll go up because that gas tax is tied to the particulates in the air. That's all it's tied to. So if there are fires, for example, then, and it's this board that is appointed and not elected. So they are operating independently of everybody. They are bureaucrats, and it's up to them to increase the taxes without any input from the citizens. And what was this country founded on? What was our battle cry right before the revolution? No taxation without representation.
Yes.
And these people who are not representatives of us are increasing our gas tax. These are the ingredients for another American revolution. And I don't know why they don't see it.
The last time they tried, the Brits tried to do that, you had the Tea Party.
Yeah.
Amazing Tea Party in Boston.
Yep.
So let's go California policies. So 7.5 billion investment in EV charging stations in 2 years, right?
Uh-huh.
Only, how many of them were made?
7, I think.
7?
Yeah, so that was a federal program by Joe Biden, and invested billions of dollars, and I think only 7 were built. Yeah.
7 for 7.5 billion.
So, yes, I believe so. I don't remember the exact numbers, but that was a big story that, again, has now been forgotten.
Quite expensive.
Very, very expensive. And again, if this was an efficient, convenient technology, people would be adopting it, right? The example that I give is the smartphone. The government didn't have to mandate that. Nobody said you need to carry this smartphone. What was the first smartphone? The first smartphone was a BlackBerry. But when you think of a smartphone now, what do you think of? You think of Apple, you think of the iPhone. So Apple didn't invent the smartphone. Apple perfected the smartphone.
The free market did.
Yes. The Chinese, they didn't invent pasta. The Italians didn't invent pasta. The Chinese invented it, but the Italians perfected it. At no point did the government tell people, you need to carry this smartphone. This smartphone is going to make your life better. I'm going to give you rebates so that you can use these smartphones. No, people saw it. People said, oh my God, this is good for me. And then they adopted it. So if something's truly a good idea, the government's not going to have to force people to adopt it. They'll do it well before the government catches on. So that's why these things of, we're giving rebates for solar. We're giving rebates to buy our electric car. They're so expensive. Barack Obama said, we're going to give all this money, all these to do solar, to do electric. And because of Barack Obama, you had people like Elon Musk and Tesla who had seed money to develop their technologies. And so what did Elon Musk do? He developed a $60,000 car. Barack Obama wanted to bring electric cars to the masses. What did we get? We got a $60,000 luxury car. How is that going to get to the masses? Right? I said, Adolf Hitler built a car for his masses, right? Barack Obama is trying, and he gets a $60,000 car. So all of these, and we're running up our budget to $35 trillion debt that we have. Why? Because of all these rebates, the solar panels that are going on people's houses, they're being financed by the government, financed by you and me with tax dollars.
People don't know that.
Laura Friedman says, I want to know that I'm giving my children and their children a healthy planet. And I say, I want to make sure that I'm not giving my children and their children $35 trillion in debt, $100,000 per American in debt. Divide that. Can you afford $100,000 debt right now on your bank account?
And it increases by 1 trillion every 4 months, right?
I've lost count, but yes, it's just spend, spend, spend. So I worry that every single person in this country has a $100,000 debt assigned to them, and it's growing. That is what I'm concerned about.
But if we look at it, that's basically a Ponzi scheme. The whole country became a Ponzi scheme. If people lose trust in the US, they don't buy the treasury bonds, right? That's it, you're done.
Correct. I don't know whether to call it a Ponzi scheme or not, but it's robbery is what it is. It's somebody distracting you, just like you mentioned Barcelona. You know, one gypsy distracts you, the other gypsy goes in your pocket and takes your money. Our money, where is it going? It's going to weapons manufacturers. It's going to special interests. It's going to pharma. We have saying, okay, Medicare. Right now, 15% of the U.S., 16% of the U.S. Economy is in healthcare. Insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, hospital corporations. That's a lot of money to be made. And it's only growing. It's the largest sector. Again, the largest sector of our economy is a sector that I am intimately aware of as a physician. And I know how to make it efficient. And so all this money that we're paying in taxes, okay, Medicare, it's going for seniors, great. But if they're paying high drug prices for a new cholesterol medicine.
Or Ozempic.
Or Ozempic, yes. If they're paying for that, but there's an old medicine that's 20 years old, that's generic, that works just as well. Why are we not paying for that medicine? Oh no, we're paying for the new medicine because it's marketed. And also what happens is I'll give you a great example. There is currently being developed a treatment for malaria. And it is getting an emergency use authorization because there is no other treatment for malaria. There used to be a treatment for malaria. It's decades old.
Yes.
Generic. And the pharmaceutical company that owns it is saying, we're not going to make it anymore because it's not profitable. So now suddenly you have a drug that's been working that is cheap as chips, leaves the market. This need is created. Oh, we need a new drug that's going to be under patent for several more years, and it's going to be extortionate price. This is the game that they play. And if you look, you have things like guns, which are a very partisan issue. So the gun lobby gives to the Republicans, it doesn't give to the Democrats.
Yes.
You have abortion, Planned Parenthood. That is a partisan issue. They give lobbyist money to the Democrats, but not to the Republicans. But if you look at the finance sector with the banks, if you look at pharmaceutical companies, if you look at weapons manufacturers, they give 50-50 evenly. Why? Because that ensures that no matter who's in power, that distraction of you from one person, while the other person reaches in your pocket and takes your wallet and steals, that will continue to happen. And that is what I'm dead set against, and that is why I think we need people over politicians. I'm not just about public safety, I'm also about term limits. Because why am I running? This seat is open for the first time in 22 years. Adam Schiff is leaving for the first time in 22 years. There's no term limits. Why is he leaving? Because Dianne Feinstein's seat, she died in office. You shouldn't die in office unless you're a monarch. But she died in office. That seat is open for the first time in almost 30 years. So he's moving because he is a parasite looking for a bigger corpse. And this seat is open. And when there's no incumbent, it's anybody's race. I'm running. Look, a regular person who never ran for office is in the final election, right? We can do this.
You tell something.
Yeah, we can do this. And that's what I want to do. Once I get in that seat, I want to say, look, term limits, get these open seats more often so that regular people like me can go and represent my friends, my neighbors, not people like Laura Friedman, who have these dreams of bicycle lanes everywhere and they're going to shove it down our throats come hell or high water.
But she's not going to ride one.
I live one street over from her and she drives her car. It's a Prius. It's a hybrid, but she drives her car.
So in regards to malaria, you have to import it to the US because that's an African problem, right?
It depends. I mean, with globalization, right? I mean, people are traveling We do see cases of malaria here, but yes, you go to Africa on a trip, you get bitten by a mosquito, you hop on a plane, 15 hours later, you're here in the States in New York, and then you can get malaria here. Yes.
Another great policy. So California wants to replace gas stoves with electric ones because of indoor air pollution.
Oh my goodness.
What is that? Indoor air pollution because of a gas stove?
Yeah, so there's this movement that, yes, they want to get rid of gas everything because it makes pollutants, air pollutants. So gas stoves, they want to replace with electric stoves. People with pools and gas heaters, they want them to be replaced with electric heaters. And they actually already passed that law. So anybody with a pool that's heated, that has a gas heater, your pool over here,
yes,
right?
Oh, it's solar.
Well, in the next 7 years, it's going to have to switch to electric. So you here in your apartment complex, right? How affordable is electric right now?
I want to say we pay.
It's a lot. It has gone up. It has gone up for everybody. Why? Because we have increased the demand. Electric cars, electric stoves, electric pool pumps, but we have not increased the supply. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when there's more of a demand, also our existing infrastructure for the electrical grid is weak. We are not bolstering it. We keep having blackouts like we're a third world country. Right? Why is the U.S. having blackouts? Because of overuse. That shouldn't happen, right? So you're increasing the demand. You're not increasing the supply. Just by basic economics, the price is going to increase. So they just don't understand it, though, right? So if you're in an apartment complex with a heated pool, and they're going to say, okay, that heated pool can no longer use a gas heater. It has to use an electric heater now. What's going to happen to the operational costs of your apartment complex? It's going to go up. What is the apartment complex going to do to your rent? It's going to go up. Basic math that they're not thinking of. But what they do is they fool the people in saying, oh, look, I'm in it for the environment. So this is where I bring it back to the gas stoves. Okay. I'm an intensive care doctor. I'm also a lung specialist. I know this data backwards and forwards. There is not an epidemic of children or adults with asthma being hospitalized or dropping dead because of asthma, because of indoor air pollution from a gas stove. There is zero scientific evidence to back up their assertion to ban gas stoves. In fact, California's asthma hospitalization rate is 30% lower than the national asthma hospitalization rate. And I know this as a lung specialist. I can speak about this. So this is not anything, this is not a movement, a law that is based in reality, in science. And I say, as a scientist, as a researcher, I love clean air, I love clean water. As a Californian who grew up with asthma, I want clean air and I want clean water, and I support reasonable legislature that gives us measurable, meaningful outcomes and does not burden our economy or increase our prices. So what do I say is measurable and meaningful? Our asthma hospitalization rate went down, and since 2015, it's been 30% lower than the rest of the country, and it's stayed constant. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's low, it's great, it hasn't changed. So every new environmental law to clean up the air since 2015 has not resulted in a measurable improvement in asthma hospitalizations. And if you're talking about the air that we breathe, what are you going to look at? You're going to look at asthma. You're going to look at hospitalizations for COPD. Those have not changed since 2015. So every new environmental law that California has passed that has increased our taxes, that are increased our electricity prices for the sake of clean air, has not resulted in an improvement that we can say, look, this is what we did. So what my solution would be is to repeal retroactively every law keeping track of the asthma hospitalization rate, and a clinically meaningful difference is 10%. So if that rate goes up by 10% after we're repealing laws, oops, stop right there. Let's go back to the last step. We park it here. That is what I would do, and that is a happy medium because, yes, I want clean air, I want clean water, but we also want reasonable prices.
But can you do that if you have this huge bureaucracy?
You cannot do that because right now we have, for the last 16 years, we've had the trifecta. You have a Democratic state, California state legislature, the assembly, Democratic Senate, and a Democratic governor.
Bingo.
In addition to that, you have a supermajority, meaning a veto-proof majority in both houses of the legislature. Democrats outnumber Republicans 2-1. Why? Because the Republicans have been terrible at putting up likable, relatable candidates.
And voting.
But also, here's the problem. There's so many people from Texas, from Florida, who say, it's your fault being in California, leave California. Right? This is my home. I've lived in Glendale for 45 years. This is my home.
That's the best place on earth.
I don't want to leave my home. Why should I leave my home? I'm staying, I'm fighting. So that's what I want to do. Again, I want to lead by example. I'm a doctor. I save lives. I'm the candidate of public safety. And I want to be the person who leads, who says, look, regular people, we can do this. Follow my lead. I will start. You follow. Let's do this.
So you've seen California, especially LA and Glendale, LA County, LA area for, you're 42, so you remember like...
45.
45.
Yes.
So you remember almost for 40 years what it's been like, right?
Yes.
When was the best time to be in Los Angeles? Early 2000s? 1990s? It was a great city once, right?
It was a great city. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. In 1984 when there were the Olympics, right? That was just a huge euphoric thing, and it was there. 1988 when the Dodgers won the World Series, that was big. In the 80s, the Lakers were winning, right? So I think it depends. In the 90s, it wasn't so hot, I guess, but nothing was really hot in the 90s. So I couldn't tell you, but the 80s were like the golden age of Los Angeles because we had good sports teams, the economy was good, but I think the 2000s also weren't too shabby.
Yeah, so it was safe in early 2000s, right?
Oh, it's always been safe. It's just that, like I said, since 2020, there has been this unacceptable acceleration of apologizing for faults rather than identifying them and correcting them.
So what I'm saying is, if more people would have their own businesses, you hire a person, he says or she says, I'm going to do this, this, and that for that kind of amount of money, right?
Yep.
3 months pass by, nothing is being done. You're fired, right?
Yes.
So in the last 6, 4, 5 years, it's going nuts.
Yes.
California, especially LA County, LA area.
Right.
It's going nuts. You have the track record. Once it's been better than it is right now, but you still vote for the same guys and gals.
Right.
That's lunacy.
It's lunacy, but it's also about messaging. One of the things that I found out is you need to get your messaging correct. And if you're not messaging it correctly, then nobody's going to listen to you. And all politics are local, and all voting is emotional. That's what I've learned. You can talk facts and figures, but in the end, feelings are really what are going to drive people. So a feeling of fear, I don't have public safety, that is going to get somebody to act. A feeling of anger, of what are my kids learning? This is inappropriate. I don't want them to learn this. That is hopefully going to get them to act. So it depends on how you get to the person, how you message it, because even just like being a parent, how are you going to get your kid to act a certain way and not misbehave? There are things that you can try that are effective. There are things that you can try that are not effective. And so it's going to be the same way with voters, getting that messaging out so you can get through to them and say, okay, this is what we need to do.
Okay, let's talk feelings. So Gore Adamyan.
Yeah.
Tell me the story. What happened to this guy? A boy, a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Because I believe the public is not aware.
Yeah. So Gore Adamyan, essentially this is a case of road rage. So he was, on a freeway in the 110. They were driving, and then I think while they were still driving, somebody cut somebody off, and the people in one car just took out a gun and started shooting at the car. And there was a child in the back seat, Gore Adamyan, 4 years old, 5 years old. He got shot in the abdomen. And then the parents, took him to a hospital, and he ended up dying. So it's road rage, this anger, and I believe they eventually did catch the person who did it and the woman who's in the car with him. I don't know what the outcome was. I'm assuming that the DA, George Gascon, charged him, prosecuted him, punished him. It's not a guarantee. But the fact that the child died, yes. So again, it just kind of speaks to what I want to introduce people to, which is adjustment disorder. Okay, so adjustment disorder is a psychiatric term. It's actually a diagnosis where somebody reacts to a stimulus in a very exaggerated way that a normal person wouldn't. So this is almost, I want to say, the same as Trump derangement syndrome, where you say the word Trump and then some people just start yelling and screaming. And it's like, hang on, because if you say Biden, I dislike the man, but I don't lose it. I don't fly off the handle. So Trump derangement syndrome is, it's adjustment disorder. So these people, the drivers, somebody cut you off, even if the car cut you off, yes, honk your horn. Okay, if you want to put a middle finger up to them, that's your job. But cutting them back off, ramming your car in, getting a gun, escalating it, that is adjustment disorder. Because would a normal, rational individual do much more outside of honking their horn? No. But chasing them down, cutting them off, taking a gun and shooting them, that is adjustment disorder. Now, are there medicines for adjustment disorder? No. You go through talk therapy, right? You say, okay, what is this stimulus? How are you reacting? How is your reaction different and more exuberant and more excessive compared to how somebody else is doing it? And this is where, we were talking, a lot of people more and more are lacking an internal stop mechanism. I told you the example of when I was out canvassing and I was out in Pasadena knocking on doors, and I was putting a flyer. And when I bent down to put down the flyer on the doormat, I noticed there were house keys that had fallen in the gravel. And so I picked up the house keys. I looked to see if there was a camera anywhere that I could put them in a mail slot. There wasn't. And then I heard the garage door behind the house open. So I went through. The man was there, going to leave. And I said, "Sir, are these your keys?" And he looked. He says, "Oh my gosh, those are my keys." And I said, you would drop them outside. I had that internal stop mechanism because I thought, what would somebody else do? Somebody else might say, "Oh, the man is leaving. I have the keys to his house. I'm going to hide here in the front garden, wait until he leaves. I'm going to go into his house and see what I can get." That internal stop mechanism, more and more, is not in people. I think, again, that accelerated in 2020 from this isolation, the social isolation. Because if you don't have your friends and your family around you saying, "Vlad, what are you saying? Come on. That's crazy." They are this external feedback to you that say, "Oh God, okay, so that's not socially acceptable. I'm going to have that stop mechanism. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to pull a gun and shoot at somebody who cut me off on the freeway." And so, gun control laws, right? So gun control for me, for you, for law-abiding citizens, that man with a criminal history who should never have had a gun, did the gun control laws stop him? They didn't.
That's the same thing, the Lake and Riley killer. He was not supposed to be in the country at all.
Yes.
That woman would be alive.
So this is where we talk about sanctuary states. So again, I keep going back to public safety. In 2022, an average of 3 high school students, age 14 to 18, died every day. 3 students died every day from an unintentional overdose because they were taking pills that they thought, Vicodin and whatnot.
Say the numbers once again.
3 students per day. So an entire classroom every week, 21 students every week were dying because they were taking pills. They were doing, drugs like with their friends that were laced with fentanyl. Fentanyl coming in from China through Mexico, through our southern border, right? Coming into counterfeit pills that kids that they think they're taking one thing and then they take fentanyl, they fall asleep and they die. Same as in the ICU, right? We put people on fentanyl intentionally so they're sleepy, but we monitor them. These kids, they're taking fentanyl. They don't know it because it's counterfeit pills. They take it, they sleep, they die in their sleep. And so 3 students every day are dying.
Nationwide.
Nationwide. But the biggest hotspots, number 2 hotspot in the country, Los Angeles County, right here. But our local police and sheriffs cannot cooperate with Customs and Border Control because California is a sanctuary state. So California police officers and sheriff's deputies are prevented by California law, which my opponent, Laura Friedman, voted for to make California a sanctuary state. They are prevented from cooperating with Customs and Border Control, who will intercept the drugs, will intercept this 5,000-pound shipment of crystal meth.
That was just caught.
That was just caught, yes. So that crosstalk isn't there. So when you say Lake and Riley, somebody who shouldn't have been in there,
Yes.
if they stop him because he's speeding and he doesn't have a driver's license, they can't ask him, for example, are you an illegal immigrant? Are you in this country legally? They can't do that here in California because they are prevented by state law, passed by my opponent, from cooperating with federal officials.
So what's the point of getting a driver license at all?
There isn't, because in California, you can register to vote without a driver's license. You can get a loan from the government to buy a home without a driver's license.
So I'm speeding. I get pulled by a police officer.
Uh-huh.
I'm telling him I don't have a driver license. Mm-hmm. He lets me go. He lets me go.
The thing is, he was asked, okay, he'll give you a ticket for driving without a license. You'll get a ticket. But are you apprehended? No, you're not apprehended. If he tries to do a background check on his computer and can't see you because you're an illegal immigrant, you don't have any records in this country, he cannot ask you, are you in this country legally? What are you doing here? He cannot. What he does is he writes you a ticket. What's your name?
Under what name?
Right.
If I don't have any IDs.
Writes you a ticket for driving without a license. He could, listen, I had my identity stolen twice. Okay?
Online.
I'm sorry?
Online?
Oh, everybody's, right? Everybody's social security number came out. 2 billion people, right? Their social security number came out. So in Texas, there's a border right near Houston, just outside of Houston. There was one over there, and then there's also one right on the Rio Grande River, right along the border with Mexico, where my name was on an electricity bill. Somebody opened up an electricity account under my name. They could have gotten a driver's license under my name. Somebody arrested them or driving without a license, they say, what's your name? And they'll say, Alex Balekian. My identity's been stolen twice in Texas.
How can you open an electricity account? So you go to the physical place, you get you show your ID. Don't they look at your ID photo on your face?
I'm not sure. You can online. You can say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. I want power. I want power connected to my house. The power is there. You just need to start an account to get the electricity going.
You can do it online. So I had to go to the LA Department of Water.
Okay.
And SoCal Gas.
I mean, again,
to do it in person.
I don't know. I don't know what kind of counterfeit things they can make, but somebody named Alex Balekian is on the Texas-Mexico border. was because I fixed it. But people will do that, and they'll give a fake name. But our police here in California are prevented from asking immigration-related questions to Customs and Border Control because of California law.
Why? Why do they do that? They hate the Americans.
Because
they hate the country. They want to destroy it.
So again, this is all about messaging. This is all about messaging, where you have California. I think right now about, I want to say 1 out of every 3 voters is Latino in California. So if you have a large voting bloc and you have a very shrewd politician who messages strategically, I'm not saying correctly, but messages strategically and says, oh, the government, doesn't want to deport you, the government wants to keep you safe, etc. And they make these laws, and then they convince a majority of people who vote to pass it. They can do anything. So it's all about the messaging. Propaganda. If it's effective, the people will follow.
Do you have any rational explanation of zero bail policy?
I don't agree with anything that George Gascon does, so asking me to rationalize a decision that I think is completely irrational, I cannot do. He says, again, zero bail. He says, well, okay, so Vlad, you are poor. Alex is rich. And if you get into a car accident, drunk driving, for example, and Alex can post bail, but Vlad, you cannot, that's not fair to you. So we should do zero bail. On paper, it sounds quite nice. It sounds very equitable, because bail, poor people will stay in jail longer, right? You won't be able to post bail. You'll lose your job. You need your job. You're the sole breadwinner. So on paper, you can make it look pretty. But in principle, is it working? I say a lot of these ideas are like communism. Communism, Karl Marx's manifesto, on paper, it sounded okay, right? Everybody's taken care of. People who are capable of working harder will be able to make up for people who are disabled and kind of help take care of them. On paper, it sounded great. But then when you put it into practice and you have living human beings who say, oh, I can get things without having to work. You know, nature wants efficiency. It doesn't want altruism. It wants efficiency. So if a living organism realizes that they can get their sustenance without expending energy, they won't expend it. So that's why zero bail policy, again, sounds good on paper because you're being equitable to poor people. But in practice, it's not helpful.
But it's not about getting caught speeding. It's about killing someone, stealing, robbing.
Correct. Yeah. So, you know, there is
molesting.
So, for example, there's a great. So he says, oh, if they're not violent, if they're not going to be a threat to society, then, you know, we're going to give them zero bail. So the great example is this kid who Fashion Island in Newport Beach was robbing somebody. Turned out to be a close friend of the Prime Minister of New Zealand. Was robbing the woman, was taking her purse. They were in a getaway car trying to get away. They ran over her and killed her. A few weeks earlier, he was caught in LA County, robbery, stealing, was released, was not put in jail, was not tried because of George Gascon's zero bail policy. And then he went down to Orange County. Thankfully, in Orange County, it's a different county, it's a different district attorney. So I don't know if you've seen those the bus billboards that say in Orange County crime doesn't pay.
Yes.
Because they're giving a warning, like don't come down here and try this on us. That said, did you hear in Fashion Island yesterday, the day before, somebody actually shot and killed somebody in a robbery? Yes.
We're about to move to OC.
Are you?
Yes.
Yeah. So somebody, I think it was like a Maserati or some luxury car that they were trying to steal, shot and killed somebody at Fashion Island. Yeah. Again, there is this lack of basic public safety that is perpetuated by this apologist, far left, progressive thinking that, oh, it's not these criminals' faults. Society made them that way. It's not this homeless person's fault. That's just, you know, how they want to live. No. We, the workers, the taxpayers, we are funding this. We will have a say in how things are run, and we want public safety. We want order.
Everybody does.
Everybody wants order.
Everybody wants it. What's AB 665?
The emancipating the children when they're 12 years old. Okay. Sorry, there's so many different laws. So yeah, AB 665 is a law. It has passed. And it allows children 12 years old or older essentially it says to access mental health services without consent from their parents. So they can enroll themselves in mental health services. Again, sounds great on paper. Many different problems to this. Number one, enrolling themselves in mental health, meaning that if they want to check themselves into a state mental health, I'm not going to say an institution, it's a halfway home, okay? They can leave their house and check themselves in there and say, my parents don't understand me, my parents yell at me, they don't like me, they don't accept me, they are bad for my mental health, I want to check myself in here. They are able to do that without the consent of their parents, without the knowledge of their parents. At 12 years old, a child lacks medical capacity.
To do so.
I, as a physician, right, how do we check medical capacity? We assess your orientation. What is your name? What's the date? Where are we? Why are you here? Are you basically oriented? Sure. And then we say medical capacity. Okay, Vlad, if you do treatment A, or if you do decision A, tell me what the consequences of that will be. And then you tell me, I will get better, or I have a risk of dying. I might die on the table if I get this operation. If you're able to tell me that and you understand that, you have medical capacity. A 12-year-old child does not have medical capacity. This is why they need an adult, a guardian, a parent, somebody with them to consent. So a 12-year-old child is not consentable. They should not be able to consent for themselves for medical treatment in the absence of their parents. But that is what is happening. So when I was younger, there was a joke. I mean, I don't know if they did this in Lithuania, but when children went missing, their picture would be on a milk carton in the supermarket. Mm-hmm. So you would go, everybody buys milk, right? And so there was this joke when I was growing up, and they said, oh, be careful, one day you'll end up on a milk carton, right? Like somebody's going to kidnap you. In those days when if a child ran away from home, the parents were sick, they put out this bulletin, everybody was looking for them, the police would find the child, reunite them with the parents. Now, if a child 12 years old runs away from home, police find the child, and the child says, I don't want to go home. My mental health is not good at home. My parents don't accept me. I want to access mental health services because my parents are bad for my mental health. That cop will not reunite the child with the parents. That cop will drive the child to the state houses where the child can do things. Those are not surveyed. They are not secured. And the parents don't know. And the crazy part is, even a child from Texas or Florida can hop on a bus and come to California. In California, they're like, okay, you're here, you can do this. Absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy that can happen.
It's not safe for my mental health just because my dad didn't buy me iPhone 15 because I have the iPhone 14.
Right. So if you run away from home and you don't want to go back to your parents because your parents grounded you, in California, you can say, I want to check myself into mental health services and do that. Now, are kids gonna do that? Maybe for a while, and then they'll probably get homesick, and then they'll say, "Oh my God, no! Please, I want to go home," because they come to their senses. But there will be children with mental illness, with anxiety disorder, right, who don't know the difference, who can't see for themselves that they've made a premature mistake, they've made a premature decision. That child, what do they need most? They need their parents. They need somebody responsible to consent for them, to help them get to their medical appointments, right? So this is very poorly thought out policy that is not, again, grounded in any medical ethical literature.
Let's talk LGBT.
Yes.
So they call you anti-gay. You being yourself a gay, they call you anti-gay.
Yes.
But why don't they call, for instance, Soros an anti-Semite? And he hates Jewish people.
So I can't answer for George Soros, but what I can tell people, when somebody calls me an anti-LGBT extremist, I say I'm not a homophobe and neither is my husband. I say apparently I'm not the right type of gay. Somebody
not gay enough.
So somebody asked me, I forget who it was, recently asked me and said, "Oh, it must be difficult being gay in the Armenian community." I said it definitely wasn't easy. And said, have you found people who are very intolerant of you because you're gay? I said, ironically, the people who are most intolerant of me are the Gay Armenian Lesbian Association. So it's this association of gay Armenians who are very far left progressive, who are, defund the police, all cops are bad, all of this stuff, social equity. Ironically, they're the ones who hate me the most. They're the ones calling me an extremist, a hateful extremist. And are there people? So yeah, there was a comment. So we had a post yesterday. I went and spoke at the city council meeting because our former mayor, current city council, Dan Brotman, holding a fundraiser for my opponent, which is fine. He can do what he wants to do. But then in the description, he says she is running against a hateful, anti-environmental extremist. Right. I just ripped into him. I said, I save lives on a daily basis. I've taught over 2,000 physicians how to save lives. How is that hateful? I said, if you were on life support in my ICU, what would I do to you?
Save you.
I said, I would do my job. I would save your life. How is that hateful? So it's those people, the party of acceptance, that hate me the most. And so when that post went up, I'd mentioned my husband. I said, you are a threat to public safety. You are a threat to my safety, my husband's safety. An Armenian guy wrote, stop saying husband for God's sake, and with a middle finger emoji. Mm-hmm. There are going to be those people. That's fine. You can't get all the people to like you all of the time. But I wrote to that man. I said, I am working hard for our community. I'm not asking you to like me. I'm asking you to respect me for my hard work, because you will benefit from what I'm doing. And then other people just kind of jumped on him. They called him a bigot. And I said, guys, don't use the words of the leftists.
The rhetoric.
Don't call bigot. Just let it go. Let it go, because you cannot argue with hard work. You cannot argue with good results. So are there people who are not accepting me in the Armenian community because they're homophobic? Yes. My mother didn't speak to me for 4 years when I came out to her, and that was when I was 38. That was 7 years ago. She didn't speak to me. Okay. But, we came back, we reconciled. She is now the biggest volunteer. She and my sister are the biggest volunteers, right, for the campaign. And so when people see the hard work, you can't argue with that. You can't argue with the good results, and that commands respect. So do people immediately like me? No. Do people eventually like me because they respect me and my hard work? Yes. So it's not impossible. And ironically, the biggest pushback and resistance that I've gotten are from the gays.
Do you have anything in common with LGBTQIAA++ community?
So I am, well, first of all, LGB should be separated from the T and the Q.
That was the next question.
Yes. So LGB, lesbian, gay, bisexual. That's not a gender problem, right? Lesbian, gay, bisexual. You're a man or a woman. That is how you see yourself. You have no problem with yourself. It's how you see other people.
Orientation.
Attraction. Mm-hmm. Yes, I like this, I don't like this, as far as personal intimacy, right? The trans and the queer, that is an internal problem. They are not happy with themselves. They are not happy with how their bodies are. They want to change their bodies. So what I tell people is, you could eliminate everybody else in the world, and the T and the Q people would still be unhappy. Why? Because they're unhappy with themselves. And that anger and that vitriol that they spew is because there's this internal frustration. They're unhappy with themselves, and what do? You don't want to solve this problem. You just turn it outwards and try to solve all the problems. That's why they're so like, oh, queers for Palestine. Let's focus on on those external issues, because internally, at the end of the day, they're unhappy with themselves. And so that is why the LGB should be separated from the TQ. I'm a man. I'm comfortable with me being a man, So with my husband, he also believes he's a man, right? We have no problems with ourselves. And I believe that there are only two sexes, man and woman, and you cannot change from one sex to the other. Frogs can, okay, but human beings cannot. So that is what I believe. So I don't want to be lumped in with that group. That said, I also don't want labels, right? I don't want to be saying, oh, Alex, you're gay, you should act this way, or you should like this person, listen to this music. No, I want to do what I want to do. I'm me, I'm an individual. Same as in California, we're all about individualism, we're all about personal responsibility, you be you. So I try to move away from labels as much as I can, which is why initially I was a no party preference when I ran. Because yes, I've grown up in a Republican household, but the Republican Party today is unrecognizable. Compared to the Republican Party that I grew up with. And that Republican Party was fiscal responsibility, balanced budgets, right? Trump and the Republicans increased the debt limit and the debt ceiling. No. The Democrats did that. No to both of you, right? One thing I tell people is I will never in Congress vote for deficit spending. If there's a budget that spends more than it takes in, I don't care if it's a Republican budget or a Democrat budget, I'm going to vote no. And that is why I started as a no party preference, but then no name, no party, no support. I said, okay, if I'm going to change this Republican Party and refocus it on what it used to be, I need to go from within. I need to change the system from within. And so that's why when people say, oh God, I can't vote for you because you have an R after your name, I said, I am a gay pro-choice Republican. Okay?
There's no such thing.
Right. Almost. So I say that, and they're like, wait, what? And their minds, you can just see their minds kind of exploding. And I tell them, I say, so what does that mean? So that means is I don't think the government should get involved in any of these social things, right? You do you. Let's all try to be respectful neighbors, and let's all be, respectful neighbors and also law-abiding citizens. And I don't want to behave through labels, be it a Republican label, be it a Democrat label, be it an LGBTQ label. I just try to shy away from labels.
Being black, white, Middle Eastern, doesn't matter.
You be you.
So I'm 36 years old. I want to say for the first time I heard this term gay or lesbian, I want to say when I was 10, maybe 12 years old, right? That was early 2000s. I was like, he's gay. Oh, wow, he's gay. No problem with that. In early 2010, 2011 in Lithuania, there occurred the first parades. And they were like, what are those parades, right? A lot of people gathered and watched them parading, etc. I was like, okay. So now if we take a look at those parades for the last 2, 3, 4 years, they have nothing in common with the lesbians or gays. They act like horses, dogs, with the attributes. Who are those people?
I don't know. I've been to a gay pride event once. I think I just started medical school. Again, I was in the closet when I lived at home, and I lived at home during college. So when I moved out to medical school that first year, I was in San Diego. I drove up to Long Beach, and they had their Pride Festival, and I was there for a day. Great, and I went back down to San Diego. That was the one and only Pride Parade Festival that I've been to.
And that was 20 years ago.
2002. It was 2000. Yes, yeah.
It was way different then.
So I don't know, because I mean what I see on television, it's if it's a gay parade, if it's a St. Patrick's Day parade, if it's a Mardi Gras parade, just all the craziness and the drinking, the drugs, and just people acting crazy. I'm like, I'm too old for that, and so that's why I avoid it. But yeah, regardless if it's, like I said, a gay parade, a St. Patrick's Day parade, a Mardi Gras parade. What do I like? I'm a responsible person, and yes, it's great to go out and have fun, but I don't necessarily want to have crazy fun like this, and that's why I don't identify with it. So I don't know what it is, but yeah, it's labels. Right? So it's something like that, any sort of gay pride parade like that, or like I said, St. Patrick's Day parade, I just try to avoid it just because I think a lot of people come and they, for different reasons, act crazier than I would like to act.
So in regards to transgenderism, you said if a child expresses a different gender, he has a higher risk of suicide. Why and how so?
So again, I'm quoting information from the Trevor Project. The Trevor Project is this kind of unilateral project that puts out its survey results, and it surveys, people who are queer, gender questioning, etc. Let's just talk generally about mental illness, anxiety, depression. Let's talk about depression, one of the most common psychiatric conditions. So there are 8 criteria to diagnose depression. One of them is suicidal ideations, harming yourself, okay? You don't have to have initial suicidal ideations, but if you have, the 4 criteria out of the 8 to get, say that, okay, you're depressed, you're like, okay, we need to treat this before it actually turns into anything where you're going to be hurting yourself. So do people with depression always have gender questioning, gender dysphoria? No. But people with depression are just unhappy. Mm-hmm. They're unhappy with themselves. I wish I had a better job, or I wish I looked different, something, but they're unhappy with themselves. So gender dysphoria is a subset of depression because the thing that you're upset about is just your body. You want to be different from your body or separate from your body. And the most extreme case of that is if you kill yourself. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that is where gender dysphoria, yes, technically speaking, it's going to have a higher risk of self-harm or suicide, but true gender dysphoria is so infrequent that you're not going to have very large-scale studies where you're like, okay, I'm going to have 1,000 people and treat them this way, and I'm going to have 1,000 people and treat them that way, and we'll see if 10% kill themselves or versus 5%, right? You don't have those large numbers, but you just kind of go off the depression literature. But other conditions as a symptom can have people who question their gender, especially now that you have connectivity in social media, where somebody is influencing that person. Mm-hmm. They're impressionable. And they have these feelings of upset. They don't know where they're coming from. They need to talk it out with somebody. And then somebody on social media says, oh, you're unhappy with yourself. You feel awkward in social situations. You don't have close friends because you don't have things in common. You try to talk with the girls in the girls' room and they don't accept you. Maybe you're really a boy. And then this young, immature, impressionable person says, oh my God, maybe I'm a boy. And there you have it, the gender dysphoria. But their problem is not that they're gender dysphoric. It's just they had underlying depression, anxiety, whatever. And somebody said, oh, that's a symptom. That could be a reason why. Then there's been this rush by these medical activists. I'm not going to call them physicians, because physicians like me should be evidence-based. There is no evidence with gender dysphoria in children. There is zero evidence. But there are these medical activists who say, oh no, you have to affirm these children's new identity. If you don't do it, they're going to kill themselves. And so they take these confused children and they take their anxious parents and they railroad them down this path of misdiagnosis. I'm not anti-trans. I am anti-misdiagnosis. And why do I say that? There are large-scale observational studies. Observational meaning you just watch the kids. You don't intervene at all. From Germany and also from the Netherlands. Large-scale, long-term, 15, 20 years observational studies of these children who have gender dysphoria. 95% of children with gender dysphoria will outgrow it by the time they are adults. 95%. And that 4 or 5% that still have it are usually lesbians with a coexisting mental illness, depression or anxiety. So put another way, for every one child with gender dysphoria that's going to grow up into an adult with gender dysphoria, you have 19 gay confused children who are going to become 19 gay, well-adjusted adults. So my whole point is, those 19 kids who don't have gender dysphoria, they're just gay. They just haven't figured it out yet, right? I am anti-misdiagnosis in them. I am anti-mistreatment, malpractice in them. You know, when I was 6 or 7 years old, I had a Miss Piggy doll with blonde hair. I would comb and I would braid the hair. The signs were there, me being a gay kid, right? If a teacher now saw me combing and braiding Miss Piggy's hair, who's to say in California they wouldn't try to ask me, Alex, do you sometimes feel like a girl? Do you want to be in a dress? Do you want to see how this dress is? If I was 6 or 7 years old, what would I know, right? I wouldn't know anything. So I say, listen, let the effeminate gay boys turn into effeminate gay men, and let the tomboy girls turn into tomboy lesbians. Don't try to persuade them that they're another sex, because 19 times out of 20, they're just going to become gay adults. There's just that one child with gender dysphoria who's actually going to be an adult.
That's a very good point. You can have attraction to the same gender without transitioning.
Right.
Just be gay or lesbian. That's
right.
it. You don't have to cut your penis off.
Correct. And also, I mean, you know, when you're 11, when you're 12, you got hormones running through your body, messing with your mind. Right?
Literally.
Messing with your mind. And there are also so many children, girls especially, who then when they're adults, they're like, oh yeah, no, I don't like girls anymore. I like boys, right? So just it's like being on drugs, right? All the hormones that are running through your body. Let them become adults. Let that puberty finish. Let their minds become adult brains. And then ask them, okay, how do you feel now? And we have data to show that 95% of them level out and they no longer have gender dysphoria. And there's another interesting study from 1991. This is actually one of my favorites. It was a study looking at boys, 5-year-old boys in a gender dysphoria clinic. And that's usually when real gender dysphoria comes up, right around the ages of 4 to 6, okay? Not when somebody's 11 or 12 years old. That is a sign of somebody who is awkward, somebody who may have social anxiety disorder and is isolated from their family because they don't know who to talk to. They look at social media and then they're impressionable and that seed is planted. True gender dysphoria happens right around 4 to 6. Like it's truly like a boy who says, oh, I want to cut off my penis. Like I want to dress in a dress. Like it's obvious. So, but somebody looked at boys in a gender dysphoria clinic and administered a survey to their moms to ask them about symptoms and things they thought, just to see if they could diagnose a personality disorder, okay? And then they took boys in the community, not in a gender dysphoria clinic, and administered the survey to their moms. And we call that, the control group. So in this group of boys at a school and the moms took the survey, 3% of the moms had criteria to be diagnosed with a personality disorder. In the boys in the gender dysphoria clinic, their moms, 60% of them met criteria for personality disorder, usually borderline personality disorder. So there was a 20-fold increase. So that was a pilot study. It was a small study, but the hypothesis they generated at the end, they said this should be looked into. They said gender dysphoria might just be effeminate boys with overbearing mothers. So that's the kind of science that interests me, but let's test that hypothesis. Let's get data. Let's not be these medical activists who are railroading these confused children and their anxious parents down an irreversible path simply because it's the socially virtuous thing to do.
But it became a religion.
It became a religion because when you go to church, do the parishioners talk back to the priest? No. It's one way.
Yes.
Nobody talks back, right? Nobody talks back. You accept it. Even if you don't accept it, you remain silent, and then other people are, like, oh, maybe other people accept it. That is what we did. Somebody was preaching to us very loudly. We were not talking back.
Yes.
Right.
You have a problem.
Yes.
You have a problem.
Correct. So our silence is what allowed this to develop and multiply. And I say no more. No more.
We can only imagine what's going to happen with those kids that transition right now after 10 to 15 to 20 years. They're going to be mad.
Yes.
They would have mental problems for sure.
So there is Chloe Cole, who is a young woman. Now she's a young woman, but when she was a girl, I think 12 or 13, she transitioned, got her, breasts removed. And then, she said, I think she had autism or, social anxiety disorder, but she had a psychiatric condition that needed talk therapy, not surgery, not hormones. And so she's very upset at her doctors. And so she's, I think, suing, I think it's Kaiser, I forget exactly where. But yeah, she's suing them because she was misdiagnosed and mistreated. And I think you're going to get more and more of these detransitioners who are going to experience regret for something that they did.
Yeah, but where were the parents? These are the people that have to make decisions.
Okay, so where were the parents? We have a law in California that is on the books that it's been struck down, but where a judge is in a child custody case is instructed to give the child to the parent who affirms the child's gender. So you may have two parents who are estranged from one another, and the mom can say, "Oh, this kid has gender dysphoria," and the dad doesn't accept the kid, and she will be able to get custody that way in California, even if it's true or not. If she says it and persuades the child, "Oh no, you're really a girl," that can happen in California.
But that's saying that a dad does not have a 50% rights to that child. It's like every time that women do abortions, they don't ask the dads, but this child has a father. He has 50% voice.
Right. I mean, it's crazy because the state is co-parenting in the home. They are deciding what is right and what is wrong for your children.
And they said our children, right?
Yes, our children, yes. Scott Wiener says these are our children. Yes.
But this transgender thing wasn't a thing 20 to 30 to 40 years ago.
No.
So that means that if you take a lot of attention and and if you do a spotlight on this thing, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
It does, yes, because it suddenly brings to the public psyche, what it is. I mean, when I was in medical school, I'm trying to remember if we may have learned about it, but it was not some large front and center topic that I remember going through it. So even if we did go over it, it was maybe half an hour on one day of lecture. But yeah, it definitely is something that has ballooned. And again, I think it is a social issue that some strategic politicians have identified and have exploited so that they can attract, recruit people, a base of voters, right, to keep them in power, to make these things happen. I don't think, I'll give you an example. In the Glendale City Council, we have we have two Armenian members of the City Council who are, all about, if gender affirming care, if children know this, etc. I would tell you that no Armenian family, especially if they're my generation, so they're as old as me, no foreign-born Armenian parents, which all of our parents would have discussed that in the home as how they were raised. So I can tell you that that was not ingrained in them, the whole transgender affirming care thing. And even if they're neutral, I don't think that they, in their heart of hearts, believe that affirming a child into irreversible gendering transition is the correct thing to do. I think in the heart of hearts, they would say, let's try talk therapy instead of doing all this irreversible stuff. But they are paralyzed because they want to work their way up in the party. And speaking out against something like that will get them excommunicated from the party. And their political future is done.
But at the same time, UK bans the puberty blockers.
Say again?
Puberty blockers were banned in the UK.
They were banned in the UK. Why? Because there was no data behind it. So, so the National Health Service has an arm that looks at data, that looks at cost effectiveness and says, okay, because the country, the government is covering this care, we want to make sure that the care has measurable, meaningful outcomes and can be delivered efficiently using as few resources as possible. So when somebody actually looked at the data, what are we looking at? We should look at survival, right, suicide rates, or else quality of life. Were there any data to show that in children using puberty blockers for gender dysphoria, using surgery for gender dysphoria, was any different than talk therapy when you looked at suicide, when you looked at quality of life? No, there was zero data. So they said, we're not going to do this. Now, can they say, we will sponsor a clinical trial where everything is clearly laid out? People who come in are explained the risks and benefits. They are consented. They understand their participation, why it is. Can we set something up like that? Sure, let's do that. But at least it's structured. It is transparent. The children and their families have the option of revoking their consent and leaving the study, right? Do it systematically, not like these medical activists are doing it in these gender dysphoria clinics where everybody simply propagates the same groupthink.
So transgenderism became such a loophole. So for instance, it's being used with pedophilias, with pedophiles in pedophilia, right? It's being used in jails. If you identify yourself as a woman, you're being incarcerated with the woman,
right,
and you rape other women, and nothing is being done because those transgenders are women as well,
right?
But they rape other women.
Yep.
But how about those women that are being raped? Don't they have any rights at all? That's a cult, like a cult, true cult, not even a religion. That's a cult.
I mean, and there's a case that Kamala Harris argued on behalf of a prisoner who wanted gender-affirming surgery in prison. And so that was approved based on her arguing it. And that person got that care when there are hundreds of thousands of older people with limited incomes who are on Medi-Cal, who cannot get their basic blood pressure medicines paid for. But we are approving for this non-life-threatening elective surgery for somebody in prison to change their gender.
How about every day 21 veterans commit suicide?
Yes.
Every day?
Right.
21.
Right. So I'm a health services researcher. So I am a practicing physician. I save lives in the intensive care unit. I'm also a lung specialist. So I know about asthma, indoor air pollution, and the results that we should be looking for. I am also a health services researcher. I am a statistician, right? I do public health. So public health is all about getting the greatest good for the fewest resources, right? Getting the best outcome for as many people as possible while using the fewest resources. That is what public health is. And so, yes, we should focus. If I were president, what I would do is I would declare a national emergency, right? We declared a national emergency for the COVID epidemic. I would declare a national epidemic of mental health so that we could devote resources to people, veterans who are struggling, who are going to kill themselves, children who have social anxiety disorders but need correct diagnoses, correct treatments, people who have drug addiction, right, who are not going to be productive, who are going to have unintentional overdoses. And again, people like that guy on the freeway who got so upset at somebody cutting him off that he took a gun and fired into the car. There is an epidemic of mental illness in this country. We don't need to treat it with drugs, okay? We need to treat it with talk therapy. We need to reestablish these social networks that give us external clues as to how we're supposed to act, how we're supposed to be respectful in a society, and that is what I would try to focus on.
Yeah, and the big part of all that is just food. There are studies, multiple studies on, for instance, on red 40. It causes ADHD in children. So every time that kid eats Cheetos, chips, some sweets, every other stuff, he gets anxious. His energy levels are just like a roller coaster. Of course, he can't control himself. He can't sit in school and to learn something. And that begins when you're 3, 4, 5 years old of age. And it continues because here in the US, the food is terrible.
Right.
In comparison to Europe, it's freaking terrible.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I would rather invest more resources in getting quality food rather than having all this synthetic processed food that's going to cause our chronic illnesses that then needs to be treated on the back end with hospitalization, doctor's visits, pharmaceuticals, etc. The example that I give is, those old wrinkled women in like Greece or Sicily who are just kind of carrying their groceries, and they carry it up the hill to their house, right? And they're 85 years old, and that woman has her cup of yogurt in the morning, and they'll eat fish or they'll eat whatever, but that's just, they're eating quality, raw, natural foods. And I would, why is it that Erewhon, right, all organic stuff, why is it that it's going to cost an arm and a leg? Why is it that you go to Whole Foods and give up your whole paycheck to get food there? Why is it that organics, for example, pesticide-free, non-GMO organics, why are they so expensive? So what I would say is, why don't we give more government subsidies to a group of farmers here in California and saying, okay, let's make it so that growing non-GMO, non-pesticide organic foods isn't going to cost an arm and a leg at the supermarket. And by doing so, we, on the back end, decrease chronic diseases that then you're going to be saving money, because we don't need to give people cholesterol pills. We don't need to give people diabetes medicines. We don't need to give them blood pressure medicines.
So Big Pharma goes out of business.
Correct. But that's, of course, the powers.
Vicious cycle.
Yes, the powers that be wouldn't want that because it cuts into their bottom line. But what I say is, I prioritize farm over pharma. That's what I would do.
100 times over 100. So why don't people, you especially Americans, why don't you think of this thing? A lot of foods that you eat here in the US are banned in European Union.
Yep.
Like, why? Because there's a reason why. If people, so for instance, 2 years ago only, or a year ago, Target went crazy with all that LGBTQIA plus stuff with the parades, the prides, children, clothes, etc.
Yeah.
People had said, we're done. Enough is enough, right?
Yep.
Stock market did the correction. Stocks plummeted for Target. Disney, the same thing. If people would be aware that they eat or they feed their children with garbage, like literally garbage, that's why they can focus. They have the ADHD. That's why their children from 7 to 10 years old have to sit on those pills because of the ADHD. Yeah. They wouldn't buy this shit.
So here's the problem. I'll give you an example of California, and then also give you the example of Turkish chestnuts. Okay. So I think California, the San Joaquin Valley, I believe provides food to a third of the country, if I'm not mistaken. So the San Joaquin Valley, Fresno, Visalia, that is the breadbasket of the country. It's in California.
Yes.
The labor laws in California, paying the $15 minimum wage, for example, and then providing all these additional benefits. I'm not saying like healthcare. What I'm saying is I have to give my employees a retirement account, because that is now mandated, even for small businesses. You have to give them a retirement account. And so things like that add up, right? And so I say, okay, I would love to hire another employee, but giving everybody all these additional bells and whistles, I can't make ends meet. So all those fixed expenditures that are foisted upon a company by the state is the minimum that the farm must earn.
Yes.
So then anything on top of that is going to be profit, right? So there's breaking even, and then there's profit. So if California, and this is not just the workers, if you are transporting things, the fruit, to market, we're paying almost $6 a gallon for gas. Diesel's even higher. These are large trucks, diesel trucks that are transporting the food. So if producing the food because of California regulations is expensive, transporting the food because of California gas taxes is expensive, you can see how the food is going to be expensive when it gets to market. Now, people use pesticides because they don't want their crop to die because of pests. That is not organic. So if you as a farmer, you're barely making ends meet, and with pesticides, 90% of your crop will survive. Without pesticides, 40% of your crop will survive. Then that remaining 40%, you're going to have to sell for more to try to make ends meet. And that is why organic foods are more expensive, right? So when you say if these people knew what crap is going into their foods, the problem is the alternative is inaccessible to them.
Yeah, but Pop-Tarts are not cheap as well.
I don't know because I don't eat Pop-Tarts. So I don't know if they're cheap or not. But yeah, everything is going up. Everything is going up because of inflation. But even in the best of times, organic foods, because they're more difficult to grow, are naturally going to be more expensive. That's number one. In addition, now let me get back to the Turkish chestnuts. There's this recent story about Turkish chestnuts, organic Turkish chestnuts coming in that weren't organic at all. Because the farms over there, they're not being inspected. We trust them on their word that they're not using pesticides, that they're not using certain things, right? American farmers, to get organic certified, they have to be visited to maintain their certification. But if a foreign country says, oh yeah, we're doing it organically, but they're not, they are suddenly now unfairly competing with our farmers, right? Why? Because the inspection is lax. So Donald Trump wants to put tariffs on people, right? Tariffs are no good because tariffs are simply going to add to the cost of things. What you do is, okay, if these other countries that are producing their goods, their organic, in quotes, goods at bargain basement prices, if they're bargain basement because it's not truly organic, let's step up the inspection. Because that way, you then, this competition, this unfair competition, you even out. So that's a better way because in the end, tariffs are still going to increase prices for everybody.
But if you take that tariff money and give it to the farmers?
As subsidies.
Yes, subsidies.
Correct, as subsidies, yes. But the problem is tariffs, what they'll do is a farmer will have no interest in lowering their prices or their costs if the tariff on the external goods is maintaining an artificially high cost. So that's the problem with tariffs. If there's protective mechanisms to prevent foreign competition, then our people will become lazy and they won't compete. And competition is always good to make things efficient.
Yeah, but Alex, hear me out. So even GMO, not organic milk, beef, chicken, eggs are way better than every other thing that is being sold at the grocery stores.
I agree. And so if there's a way to make that cheaper, I would say let's look into that. And if it's a matter of, it's really hard to operate a farm. One of my best friends, his parents, his father was a farmer. So I get a lot of insight from him. And he's like, it's very difficult being massively profitable. That's why you have these very large agribusinesses that are working at, economies of scale, and they're not doing organic goods, right? And they have the bargain basement stuff that's then going as these artificial ingredients in our food supply. And if it's a matter of, okay, the government has to prop up with subsidies these small business farmers so they can make non-GMO organic foods. I'm not entirely against it if we can see that on the back end, those quality foods in our system then 5 years later decreases the heart attacks, the high cholesterol, and that way you then save on the back end because, our healthcare costs, instead of being 15% of our economy, is now only going to be 10% of our economy.
These are huge numbers, huge difference.
Huge, yes.
Just in 5%.
Yep.
There is at least one country in the world, huge country, that banned GMOs, and they survived.
Russia, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's possible. It's
Yeah.
like it is possible to have lower crime or lower homelessness in Glendale than in Los Angeles. So it's possible, right?
Yes, yeah.
So it means that it is possible to ban the GMOs and to survive.
Yes.
Because Russia does so. There are options.
Yep.
But people just there are multiple reasons why don't they do that? Aren't those big farms owned by the same companies that own big pharma?
I don't know so there was recently so there's a book out, I forget the author's name, but it's a brother and sister. The brother is I think they're both raised in Washington D.C., but the sister went out
Tuckers,
to the sister went out to Stanford to do surgery, and then never practiced medicine because by the end of her surgery she said, hang on, we're being reactive to all these diseases. I'm not even being taught how this happens, and she's being proactive. So now they're all about the food that's in our system. I think looking into it, and so they said like the cigarette companies, and which is actually true. So R.J. Reynolds in the 80s was tobacco, okay, and then now they're RJR Nabisco. So Nabisco, which makes crackers,
yes,
Cheez-Its, etc. So R.J. Reynolds, RJR, now it's RJR Nabisco. And so they said that these cigarette companies, because, now there's a ban in 1984 from the Surgeon General, where are we going to make up this money? They said, okay, let's buy food. Rather than addicting people with nicotine to cigarettes, let's addict people to food with artificial ingredients. And so that's what their book covers. I haven't read the book, but based on their publication, so there are people, large conglomerates, that are wanting to control the food, the food source, just to make themselves money.
So the biggest pros and cons of having a First Amendment is having a free speech.
Yeah.
And the con is basically the same thing, having a free speech.
Yep.
So having a free enterprise is good, but at the same time is bad because you're having a free enterprise.
Right.
So you can lobby, you can do all this crazy and bad stuff for the people who sell bad products. So the last question on my podcast is always the same. Let's have two assumptions with you. Assumption number one is the President of the United States, the position of the US President, he is the most powerful human being on planet Earth. Assumption number two is you become one. Once you become the President of the US, you have the Secret Service at your disposal.
Yep.
They come to you and say, Mr. President, we love you, we respect you. We as a Secret Service, we have all the answers in the world, right?
Okay.
You ask us a question, we give you an honest answer.
Okay.
That's going to be the truth.
Okay.
What would be your first question?
Oh gosh. And they know everything in the country, everything in the universe.
And everything in the universe. They know the truth.
Past and present, historically, my first question would be, who killed JFK?
Wow. It's like 80%.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Aliens or JFK?
Yeah. I was gonna, so I haven't watched other people's answers. That was also gonna be my next one. Is aliens true?
It's very common. Okay, so you being a president, you got this question answered. You got all the files.
Okay.
Would you expose it to the public?
That's an interesting question. So I'll answer it by telling you something from my personal, actual, real experience. In the intensive care unit, I am very communicative with patients and their families. I don't always give the full picture. And when I say I don't give the full picture, I don't lie to them, but I give select information. The example that I'll give is the stock market, right? People say, don't look at your stock portfolio every day. Because one day it's up, one day it's down. It's going to be this emotional roller coaster. Maybe check in on it every week, because all the little squiggles will go out and you can see, okay, is this increasing slowly? Is it decreasing slowly? So in the intensive care unit with patients, so what I'll say is, the first thing I'll do is I will calculate. I said, okay, your loved one who is coming in with a heart attack, for example, right? Actually, there's a perfect case. This man came in with a heart attack. I said, okay, you got your stent placed. Your heart attack is completed. You're going to be here in intensive care. 90% of the time, people do well. 10% of the time, they don't do well. They don't leave the hospital. I said, and what happens is they're fine until one moment they just have this sudden cardiac, your heart stops. I said, and we do CPR. I said, but it's sudden, and that is why everybody is in the intensive care unit for this first 24 hours, so that 1 out of 10 people we catch. I said, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to be fine. And then I told the wife, I said, just leave a phone number with us, okay? So that man, when I was looking, occasionally had this abnormal 2 or 3 beats. I was concerned, not alarmed, but concerned. Was I going to tell the patient this? Was I going to tell the wife this? I don't know, because it was the one time that happened. I don't want to alarm him because maybe the stress of it might actually cause more things, yeah. Right? But I'm not going to lie to him. That's why I said in the beginning, like, this may happen. So knowing what I know, so that happened, never happened to the man again, right? Because we put medicines to kind of stop it. It was fine. So I was like, they didn't need to know that because I told them this happens to 1 out of 10 people, right? So in answer to your question, would I release that information simply because I knew it? Well, no, because with patient privacy and stuff, like there are things that I know that I'm not supposed to release. And if other people already don't know it, why should they know it? But if I was asked, or if something came up where it was important, and acting as if I didn't know the information, if that's a choice that I had, I would always act that I knew the information. I wouldn't hide it.
Why do you think it's so important for the Americans to know the truth about the JFK killing? Just
because, who killed our president? We know who killed Abraham Lincoln, right? We know who killed McKinley, right? The man, somebody came up and they shot him, they caught him. And so it's one of those reasons. Right now we're in a position where we are in because we don't trust our government. Our government no longer works for us. Our government does not represent us. And that mistrust didn't happen suddenly. It's been building. And things like JFK, where if it truly was the CIA that killed him because he stood up to Khrushchev and the Cuban Missile Crisis and almost launched World War III, and they said, no, we can't have that. Or if it was, some people said it was the mafia that killed him because the mafia got him Illinois, which was a state that he needed, but then when he acted against their interest, then they killed him. So it's one of those things where if it's creating mistrust with the government, and people want to know about it because it will either confirm that notion, and then they can say, okay, wow, there is a deep state. Wow, we really need to fix this so that it's not the deep state controlling the government, it's the people controlling the government. Then I think it would go a long way, and I think that's one of the reasons why people want to know. Because how is it that we in this country in the 20th century couldn't figure out who killed our president? I mean, they said it was Lee Harvey Oswald, right? But were there, all the circumstantial things of, there was, another bullet that came out of the grassy knoll. I mean, and I did my residency in Dallas, and I've been to the grassy knoll multiple times. And it's just interesting, like, were there other people present there rather than at the school book depository?
And that was a perfect place for an assassination. It
was a perfect place for the assassination, although you can, realize that, right, I don't know how far it is compared to what that shooter with Trump was, but that kid that was on the roof in Pennsylvania that shot at him
only 2 months ago.
Yes, and grazed his ear, right? I don't know how far back the school book depository was from the car, but if it was similar to that, you're like, okay, look, this guy got really close. So if you were up there and you had time because people didn't see you, and you tried to get like 3, 4, 5 shots, I don't know if it's possible, or if it's nobody from that far away could have struck a moving target like Kennedy was. So I'm not sure, and that's why I think there's this enduring controversy to that whole killing.
So on November 5th, November 4th is going to be an election.
November 5th, yes.
November 5th.
Yes, first Tuesday of November.
lots of people have no idea that you're not gonna only elect the president, future president, but you have to elect some other people, right?
Yes, you're electing the president, vice president. You are electing all of the House of Representatives, and you are electing 1/3 of the Senate. In addition to your local city council members, and in California, your state legislature, but not your governor this year.
So you're going to have on the ballot lots of positions when you have to.
Lots of them, yes. I think there were so many in March for the primary because there were also, so Glendale, where I live, city council elections were in March, but in Burbank, the neighboring town, they are now in November. There were so many judges running for office that, district attorney, for example, that's going to be decided in November. George Gascon versus Nathan Hawkman. I support Nathan Hawkman. So yes, there are a lot of them, and we're hoping that people don't get fatigue voting and that they vote for all of them. But what they do now in the ballots is local elections come first, and then the president is last. So it forces you to look at your local elections first before you get to president.
Or do you just leave it blank?
Or you can leave it blank, yes.
That's the worst thing that you can do, right?
For my strategy, because most people don't know me and most people don't know Laura Friedman, the people who don't know are going to vote for the D after her name. So in our districts, I would be happy if the Democrats don't vote for the D. So top choice is a vote for me. Middle choice is a vote for nobody. Lowest choice is a vote for her. So I'm not going to be completely heartbroken if people don't vote at all, because no vote still helps me.
Would you agree that this election is the most important election, not only in the US, but in the whole world?
Everybody says that every year. I'm not going to lie, though. I feel like this is important because the pendulum has swung so far to the left that if we don't move the needle on this election, I don't know if we're going to have an opportunity like this. I know everybody says, oh, this is definitely the election. I'm not going to lie. I pay attention to elections. Even I feel like this one now, it is a unique opportunity that I don't think we're going to get ever again. And if we don't capitalize on this one, we're not going to get an opportunity.
So 2016 was fun, right? Hillary versus Trump. Haha, this orange guy bad,
right,
and etc. 2020 was like, maybe Biden is not going to be that bad. No one knew him. Everybody knew the 4 years of Trump.
Yep.
Nobody knew what's going to happen under Biden. Now people know, they have the track record. What happened in those 3.5 years.
Right.
Who's the president right now? He's just on a vacation.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who's running the country. I don't know who's running the country.
Like nobody.
Yeah, I don't know.
So you have a track record. What happened during Trump? What happened during Biden?
Yes.
And people will still vote left.
I'm not going to lie to you. So in 2016, people didn't vote for Trump. They voted against Hillary. Okay, there were a lot of people who disliked her so much that they voted for Trump. So I don't think he won the election by himself. I think that a lot of people voted for him because they disliked Hillary so much. In 2020, it was the exact opposite. People voted for Biden because Donald Trump turned them off so much. Okay, same thing in 2024. I don't like Kamala, but I'm so fatigued by Donald Trump. And so the example that I give is friction. In physics, friction is a potential force. It's not an actual force. So if this cup is staying here, there is no friction. But if I'm trying to move the cup, then there is friction under the table. And if I move the cup in a certain way, like I drag it like this, there is more friction. So you can affect the amount of friction there is based on how you move. And that's efficiency. And so when I see Donald Trump, who gets distracted by his vendetta against this person and then gets distracted by a personal attack, he could be so much more efficient in lowering prices, in stopping wars, in kind of getting everything on track if he simply focused on issues rather than one thing that somebody said to him that pissed him off in 2020.
Like he was at the speech at the RNC.
In Atlanta. And I don't know about RNC. I mean, he talks about Governor Kemp from Atlanta, the governor, and he was still harping on that. And I was like, that was 4 years ago. Focus on now.
Yeah, I meant the good Trump when he gave a speech at the RNC in Minnesota.
Milwaukee. Yeah.
He was gentle. He was calm.
Yes.
90 minutes. That was a whole another Trump. We have never seen that kind of a Trump.
Yeah. And I think he confronted his own mortality with that assassination attempt.
How can you not?
Yeah.
That's crazy. So, Alex, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
God bless you.
I appreciate it.
I hope changes in good way are going to come to California. The best place on earth.
Yep.
No other state, no other country has this kind of a climate, this kind of a nature. You've got mountains, you've got ocean, you've got the scenery, you've got everything right here.
Yep.
And you've got great people. But everything that's going on in the last 4, 6, 8 years, I can't acknowledge it.
Yep.
I hope the change will come to California with your help.
I hope so too, and I would like to speak directly to people. I've had a wonderful time. Thank you for speaking with me, and I just want to remind people again. I'm Alex Balekian, MD, born and raised in Glendale. I save lives, and I personify public safety, and I am the candidate for public safety running. And we have not been able to get this far without people, grassroots support like you supporting us. So I'd like you please to get to know us better. You can go to our website. It's alexforca30.com, or you can just put alexbalekian.com and you can end up on our website. I ask people, please, again, what do we need? Votes, contributions, introductions. If you live in the district, please remember to vote. I do need your vote. As far as contributions, you can donate to our campaign. You can see our billboards everywhere, our flyers that we put out. That actually costs resources. So we'd love your help with contributions. Also, contributing your time, making phone calls, getting people to get out the vote. That is what we need. So we'd appreciate your help. And Vlad, thank you very much again for having me.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it.
God bless.